Software Underbelly is about truth-telling. It's about creating a space for stories on society's most marginalized that venture beyond our own biases, which is why Ground News is the perfect sponsor for my channel. In a world where sensational headlines flood our feeds, some of the most important stories get overshadowed. Ground News highlights local news from around the world, which gives an on-the-ground perspective that might be missing from national coverage. The app and website empowers you to form your own opinions by serving you every article published on any news story worldwide, plus data about its credibility and where it may fall on the political spectrum. I particularly like their blind spot feed, dedicated to showing news stories that are underrepresented in the mainstream media. Their election coverage was a great example of that. It's easy to forget how much bias can shape the reality we live in. And in a world where our attention is constantly being fought over, my Vantage plan easily helps me keep up with the more important stories slipping through the cracks. So I encourage you to check them out at ground.news/SWU. Right now they're offering 50% off their Vantage plan as a limited time offer. Their platform is also subscriber funded, meaning that when you subscribe through my link or even gift it to someone you know, you're helping to hold the media accountable and you're helping my channel. Thank you very much.
I'm just going to do it very lightly. Do you keep those there because people get emotional?
Yeah, that's why. That's why. You'd be surprised how often I've had tough motherfuckers from prison.
Oh, dude, I think crying is good for the soul.
Great.
Yeah, it's just like it's like cathartic. Yeah. Now I catch myself crying at TikTok videos. I'm like, oh God, that hit me. Does my collar look okay?
You look great. You're the best dressed gangster I've ever had in here, I think.
Former gangster.
Former. All right, Rene Enriquez. You got the name Boxer. How'd you get the name Boxer?
When we were kids, my brother and I went to a boxing gym. It was called Underbelly Youth Boxing, and a couple of friends were with us. And we went in there and we trained for one day. We didn't have apparel, we didn't have tennis shoes, we didn't have nothing. We had literally ourselves going to the boxing gym. So we hit the heavy bag and tried to jump the rope. And we walked out of there and my brother says, you know what? Boxer would be a good name for you. And it stuck with me. And I hate the name because I don't box. So it's just a name that stuck with me throughout my entire adult life and came to define me really as a gang member and a gangster.
What was your childhood like?
Very traumatic. I had a traumatic childhood. I had a dysfunctional family. There was a lot of domestic violence that I witnessed and experienced some childhood sexual trauma in my youth. So it wasn't the idyllic household that I've always portrayed it to be. So it was completely different from that.
You had a mom and dad, though?
I had a mother and father, very loving, very supportive. Father was born in Clarkdale, Arizona. Mother was born in Jerez, Zacatecas, Mexico. Came to America and achieved the American dream. My dad was an entrepreneur. He owned resin craft decorating industries, a liquor store, commercial real estate. He did well. And that was a family dream. I mean, his idea was to have us go into the family business, but my brother and I had different aspirations.
Why is it so many young men have these aspirations of getting in a gang and
I think it's,
all that?
You know, I think it's fundamentally this. I think that people who join gangs are lacking something in their life. I think that gangs serve a purpose. Jesse Katz from the Los Angeles Times said the gangs serve a purpose. They fill a void in people's lives. So there has to be something essentially wrong in your life to seek out the acceptance of dysfunctional individuals. And gangs accept you for your idiosyncrasies. They accept you for your flaws. They applaud your antisocial behavior, and they embrace you. It's unconditional. It's unconditional acceptance. And for an individual who's traumatized through economic disadvantage, through substance abuse, through domestic violence in the family, physical abuse, abandonment, childhood sexual abuse, whatever that ideology is, it drives people to seek out something that they can't find in their family unit. So I think that is the the main reason why gangs exist. You know, there's been presidential administrations and gubernatorial administrations that have sought to quell gang violence in urban and suburban areas, and they're not successful because there's one fundamental thing that drives gangs, and it's the need to be accepted. So I think that is the core of gang membership, and you know, a lot of people don't realize that once you get into a gang, it escalates. You continue to participate until you get to a point where you go to prison, because that's the only outcome of gang membership. It's death or prison.
Death or prison is pretty much the only options. How did you get into it?
My brother was an Artesia gang member, ARTA, A-R-T-A. He was a gang member, and this is a small town adjacent to Cerritos, California, where we lived. And he became an Artesia gang member, and they would come over and party in our garage, smoke marijuana and drink, and they had tattoos. They were cool. They dressed nice. I thought they dressed nice at the time. They wore Pendletons and creased clothes, and they had this magnetism, this allure. These guys that had gotten out of prison, these hardcore thugs, and I wanted that. Like, I wanted what I thought they had was that respect, that charisma. In Spanish, we call it pegue. You know, you have like pull, right? Like you're attractive to the chicks, right? And that's what I wanted. I was just a kid. So I hung out with them, and my brother would run me off, and then I'd always go back, and finally he let me hang out. And then one day, we're walking down the street. My brother's at his girlfriend's house, and I'm with his girlfriend's brother and another homeboy. And they pull me behind a gas station, and they said, "We're going to jump you in the hood." And I told them, "No, I was afraid." They said, "We're going to initiate you." It was called an initiation. And I said, "No, I was about 12. But they dragged me behind the gas station and beat me up, made me cry. I mean, I was bawling like a little child, right? I was a child. And they picked me up, they brushed me off. "Hey, homeboys don't cry." And that was it. After I was from Artesia. And they told me, "Don't tell your brother." I didn't tell my brother for a couple of days, and I told him, and he was like, "Okay, you're in now." And it was something that I did well. I found that I could be a good gang member. I could dedicate myself to this. I belong to something.
And what kind of activities would you get into?
Oh, you name it, we did it, you know.
Is it all about making money?
No, not at the time. Not at the time. I wasn't focused on that. It was more about girls and getting high and showing that I had heart, you know, that I was willing to put in work for the hood. And that's how my early criminal career started. Until later, I started dealing dope, heroin, cannabinol, PCP, marijuana. And I got into that early in life because I watched my brother. I remember I walked into the room one time, and I had an air hockey table. This is when they first came out, and they were selling for the home. And there was a kilo on top of the air hockey table. You know, it was marijuana, and he was breaking it up. And I looked, and I said, "Oh, okay." And then I remember that after he got finished bagging up all of his weed, I would turn on my air hockey table to play with my other little brother, and marijuana soot and dust would come out of the little holes, right? And I was like, "Man, this guy kind of ruined my game," you know? But, I mean, drugs were like part of my household. You know, I was immersed in it. My brother dealt dope, used dope, and then, you know, it just became part of a money-making venture for me down the line. I mean, I started dealing dope, and I became good at it until I became addicted, and then I became my own, my best client.
How do you transition from just being an Artesia gang to the Mexican Mafia?
That's the thing. I never aspired to be a Mexican Mafia member. I didn't set out and say, you know what, I want to be a carnal. That's what they call members, carnales. I never set out to be that. In fact, I had a cousin, his name was Ray, and he had done time in prison, and he was a righteous soldier for the organization, right? and they called him Turkey from Ochentas. And he was in prison for murder. He got out. And I asked him about it one day, because we used to work at my dad's factory. My dad and his brothers owned this factory, resin craft decorating industry, and he was working there with me. So we hung out naturally, my cousin. And he had the allure, he had the look, he was handsome, he had tattoos. So I naturally gravitated towards him. Like, I want to be like this guy. And I remember he used three flowers pomade. And so I went and got some, and I started using that, right? And I wanted to emulate these guys. Everything they did, I wanted to be, right? And I asked him one day, we got our checks on a Friday. We went out, bought some beer, and we're in the car. And I asked him, I says, hey, can you tell me about the Mexican Mafia? And he just looked at me like a deadpan, dead in my eyes, and says, you don't want to know about that. And that's all he ever said. And then I go to prison in 1980. I got arrested in Orange County for some robberies, and they sent me to prison. And it was there that I was immersed in the subculture, because you don't really hear about it at that time on the streets. It was like hushed whispers and undertones, and it was a secretive thing. You weren't even supposed to voice the words the Mexican Mafia in that era. Now it's everywhere. It's on social media. It's people saying this and people saying that. So it's not really that secretive anymore. It's a secret organization, but it's the worst kept secret in California criminal history, because everybody talks about it now. But at that time, it was like, it was not really known. Everybody knew it existed, but nobody knew the inner workings of it, not like today. So when I went to the county jail, I saw somebody who had shot at my house, rivals from Hawaiian Gardens. And I told somebody, I want to stab that guy. I want to get him. He shot at my house. And I said, you can't do that. You can't do that, bro. I said, well, what are you talking about? This guy shot at my house. We're rivals, I'm going to whack this guy. Excuse me. And he said, no, you can't. He said, you'll get whacked. So he sat me down and started schooling me. He says, look, you're part of the cause now. What they call la causa. Spanish for the cause. And he says, now you're a sureño. You're gonna listen to what these guys say, because they run this place. So I said, well, okay, cool. So I tattooed sur on the back of my neck, which has since been removed. I had my tattoos removed. And I started down the path, getting educated about the South Side and Sureños, because I was initially just a South Sider. But as I started gravitating towards participation in organizational activities, then I became a Sureño. It wasn't until I reached DVI, the Dual Vocational Institution in Tracy, California, that I did my first hit for the organization. And amazingly, it was a guy from Santa Monica that I hit. His name was Angel from Santa Monica. I remember my first day on the yard, a guy by the name of Roy Boy Rivas, a well-known Mexican Mafia member, approached me and says, hey, you're boxers? I says, yeah. He says, hey, the carnales want you to do a favor, right? And I knew what that meant immediately. And I told him, yeah, I'm down. So he hands me this big knife, like this. It was you ever see the paint rollers? Mm-hmm. It was the chrome part, right? They cut it off, sharpened it to a pointy end, and wrapped a T-shirt around the end for a handle. So I put it in my waistband, and he says, this other guy is going to go with you, and it's Puppet Martinez from 18th Street. This guy's mythical in his figure, his position in 18th Street, like Puppet Martinez is a very well-known Mexican Mafia member, currently in ADX in Colorado, subjected to SAM's special administrative measures, where they keep the terrorists and all that. It's called ADMAX. So me and this guy, we're kids. We go, and he tells me, look, I'm going to walk up behind this guy in the handball court, and I'm going to grab him, and you just start whacking him. I told him, okay, that was the plan. So first day in the yard, I go out there. I'm a little nervous. I'm a little scared. They got guns. The gunners, they have real guns, Ruger 223s, the Mini 14, and they will shoot you. So he goes, and he grabs this guy, and I just start whacking him. Boom, 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 and it's done. My first hit. And after that, it was fast track. I was off to the races. Like, we were doing hits every day in DBI, and
So this is all in prison.
this is all in prison. Yeah, this is where I got my introduction to the organization. You know, in retrospect, and I want to point something out that I don't speak about this in braggadocio, in a sense of pride, or I'm glorifying, because there's nothing glorious about the organization or honorable about what I did. I think that one of the most important things that I would like to relay is that I am remorseful for what I've done. Not everything. I'd be a darn liar if I said that I was remorseful for everything. But, you know, I hurt a lot of people. And I don't want to sit here and have anybody, particularly the surviving family members of some of my victims, think that I'm glorifying my past, because, you know, unfortunately, a lot of people got hurt. Not just the victims themselves, and I'm cognizant of that, and I want to point that out immediately. But that was my introduction to the organization.
You were how old at the time?
I was about 20 years old when I did my first hit. I was a young buck. I was full of piss and vinegar. I wasn't angry at the world. I was a happy-go-lucky guy, easy to get along with. And I just wanted to fit in again. And that was the pattern my whole life, wanting the acceptance, a people pleaser. And when you look at it, when you really, I mean, when you analyze it and you take it down to its nuts and bolts, it's to the granular level, you see that most gang members are people pleasers. They want to have people agree with them and accept them, and they'll do anything for that acceptance, and I was willing to kill for it. That's just the unfortunate, sad truth about my entire life, is that I was willing to kill for acceptance. And it wasn't until years later that somebody told me, ex-girl that I had, said, how could you be so fucking stupid to kill people for people that want to kill you? And it was like a light bulb went off, an epifocal moment. I said, what the hell am I doing? What am I doing? But it took years of therapy and stuff for me to finally break it down and understand it. But I understand that now, you know, that I was chasing a brass ring that wasn't there, you know. I thought that the organization made me special, that I was like a Superman. I had these superpowers, and you really do. I mean, it's an awesome responsibility to hold life and death in your hands and say, yeah, whack that guy, or don't whack that guy, or yeah, give me that free money, you know, and go extort that guy and take his SUV or whatever, right? That's intoxicating, that kind of power. It really is. It's alluring, you know, for somebody to say, nah, I don't want that. And once you get it, it's addicting, you know. It's very, like I said, intoxicating. But for all that, you know, there's so much negative behind it, you know. There's so many consequences that come. Like your life's over, literally. Your life is literally over when you commit to the organization. And I'm not here to badmouth the organization. I'm really not. That's not what I'm here to do. You know, I have quite a bit of empathy and still feeling for some of the individuals in the organization that were my friends. I don't sympathize with them anymore. I'm obviously on the other side of the fence. But I wish that they could live a day of life free, you know, just to breathe free air, just to walk in a place where you see nothing but color, and hear voices and hear babies crying, and feel the touch of a woman, and smell her hair, and you walk by a grocery store or a shopping mall and you smell perfume from a woman, or eat a good meal. I wish that those guys could experience that. Or the simple peace of being in peace. You know, it's a powerful thing when you could sit back and say, I'm finally at peace. I found my spot. I think that's important. And if they could experience that, I think that they would go out in droves. They would leave. Like, I'm done with this, you know? I just think that's all they know. That they're still chasing that breast ring. They think that they've arrived, but their trip's already over. You know, it's a harsh reality that a lot of them may never realize. And I feel sorry for that, for those men, that there is an alternative. You know, it doesn't have to be violence. And you don't have to do what I did. You know, you don't have to go the route that I did, becoming an expert witness and working for law enforcement. You don't have to do that. You could just do what you do, but live life. Free of violence, free of hatred, free of the vinegar that runs through your veins when you're involved in that. Because it's a really cruel, harsh, and brutal lifestyle. And I lived it 20 years, and it's had its impact on me, as I'm sure it's impacting them.
That hit that you just described a little while ago, that was something you got convicted of in prison?
No, never convicted of it.
You never get convicted in prison?
Back then, it was like, they'd pick up the body, they'd pick up the knife, and it's like, play ball. Go ahead, resume normal activities. It was like today. Like today, if there's a hit in the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, it gets locked down. They seal off the crime scene. It's like a real crime scene now. They've advanced in their investigative technique, and their evidence processing has become refined with the objective of ultimately a prosecution in the future, right? But back then, it was like, pick up the knife, throw it in the trash, get the body, throw it on the meat wagon, and let's go. And it didn't really impact anybody, you know? Back then, you could do a hit, and you only lost 45 days good time credit. And then you could do a hit and get away with it. Now, that's an impossibility. They have these things called 1030s in the Department of Corrections where people drop anonymous notes, and it's like the thing in prison. Like, everybody's dropping notes on everybody. Even the actives do it. You know, they drop kites on people. And it's just a way of life in prison. You know, there's informants everywhere. But back then, it was these were the gladiator days. In fact, they called the Dual Vocational Institution the gladiator school, because you went there and you were going to gauge some warfare. You know, I was a little apprehensive, you know, but after that first hit, I was like, man, this is butter. This is easy, you know, and then I started doing hits for the organization.
Did you ever get convicted of other murders?
I was convicted of 2 murders, of the murder of a Mexican Mafia member and the wife of a Mexican Mafia member's brother. I was convicted of those 2 murders.
Are these murders where you were asked to do it?
I was asked. Well, one was a Mexican Mafia member by the name of David Gallegos. He had fallen into disfavor with the organization. And I got a phone call from Benjamin Peters that asked me to take care of this guy, that he had to go. He was on the lista. It's the hit list, right? And I said, yeah, I'll take care of it. And lo and behold, this guy shows up at a dope house I'm running one day, trying to extort the drug dealers that I'm controlling. So we bring him into the house, and I welcome him. Hey, brother, how you doing? And, you know, we start talking politics, and I talk to another deceased Mexican Mafia member, Jaco Padilla, and I tell him, hey, go fix him a hot shot. And he fixed him a hot shot. And we injected him. He overdosed. We put him in a car, took him to an alley, and shot him to death. Just to be sure. We were fairly certain that he was deceased after the hot shot, but just to make certain, we shot him. And the other one was a woman who was the wife of a Mexican Mafia associate. Her brother-in-law was a Mexican Mafia member. I ordered her death. I didn't do that personally, but I ordered her death. Out of respect for the family, I'll refrain from naming her. But yeah, I was convicted of 2 murders. I served 32 years, 6 months and 4 days for that sentence.
So once you were working with the Mexican Mafia, then the games, the things you're getting into become much higher.
Exponentially heavier. Yeah. Exponentially. You know, it's.
You were in the minor leagues before that.
Yeah, I was minor league before that. That was like doing hits and running yards. That's part of the grooming process, your educational process, if you will. Once you're a made guy, it gets significantly more dangerous. You know, you think that, oh, I'm made now, nobody can touch me. But it's not the external factor that you have to worry about. It's the internal politics that get you. You know, and I learned early on that it wasn't what I thought, because I thought it was silk suits and limousines. You know, I thought, oh, mobster, you know, it's everything on a silver platter now, you know. But it wasn't that way. It was not that way. When I got in, like, there were guys with holes in their shoes and no money on their books and struggling to get a TV, because we were allowed TVs in prison. It was disillusioning, really. I was dismayed that the Mexican Mafia, for all its ferocity and might and reputation, didn't really have a financial objective, other than the few members that extorted people and dealt dope. That was the whole goal of the organization. It's like, we kill for the glory of killing, and you can't use the Mexican Mafia's name to make money. And that's what it was. But as time went on, some of the mustache Pete's fell away, and we came into power. The younger guys, the Pepsi generation is what they called us. I don't know who called us that, but it stuck. You know, because remember the commercials of Pepsi generation? That's where we all got made. There was about 20 of us that got made in Folsom. And in San Quentin, there was about 5 or 10 that got made there. So this is a big wave of induction. And it was us that brought about this change in the organization. You know, first was stopping the drive-bys, and then the horizontal integration of the mob from prison into the street gang subculture, where we appointed reps in each gang to communicate with us, like acting as a conduit, and to collect for us, collect illicit monies that were generated in each gang. I mean, that was like a pivotal moment for the organization back in '92. But I mean, I want to dispel some of the myths that are out there too, that I was the one that organized it. I just played a part in it. Like, there was Alex Pee Wee Aguirre, Raymond Wedo-Shashrayak, Black Dan Barella, Mayon Gallardo. There were a lot of brothers on the streets at the time, and I played a part in the concept of it and enforcing in the county jail when I was housed in the county jail. For anybody who violated the edict of stopping the drive-bys, I would have them whacked in the county jail. And it worked. It's still in effect today. There are no peace treaties, really. I mean, people violate this rule all the time. And you know, if you violate the rules, it's become a financial opportunity for the organization, with the threat of, we will put you on the green light list if you don't pay. So that's a common practice now. But I mean, we're talking, my involvement in organized crime, true organized crime, really began then, because I started organizing crews on the streets. I started, franchising, if you will, licensing my name to drug dealers. They would pay me a specific amount of money every month to fall beneath my umbrage. So they were part of my crew. Nobody can go and extort them, rob them. If enforcement was needed, that was available. You know, it was just eye-opening for me. And I saw the potential. We saw the potential. I remember when I first got in the organization, we attempted to collect commissary items from inmates in the SHU, the security housing unit where we're at. And we tell them, hey, just kick in a little bit when people come in. And it was truly for this purpose, for taking care of the individuals who came into the SHU who had nothing. We'd send them care packages, coffee, tobacco, hygiene items, comfort items like comfort food, and we'd have all that stuff stored up. So we got it going, and we did it for a month or two, and then there was a paisa, a Mexican national, who was a friend of Joe Morgan. It was me, David Galvedon, Mariano Martinez, and I think there was another member. We were doing this. We were collecting all these commissary items, and we had them. We weren't eating them ourselves. We were saving them for everybody. And it wasn't to gain financial. It wasn't a financial gain for us. It was more in the interest of everybody, all the Sureños coming into the SHU. But this paisa, this Mexican national, went out to the yard and told Joe Morgan. You know, Joe Morgan, a lot of people called him Peg Leg, but we never called him that. And he hated that name. Nobody ever called him that to his face. And I'm only referring to him in that in that sense because everybody knows him as Joe Pegleg Morgan, right? But this Mexican national goes out and tells him, hey, these guys are extorting me. And don't you know we got dressed down out there? Joe Morgan, Black Umbrella, Wadoshai Shryak, like the titans in the organization, have us out there in a little circle, and Joe Morgan's yelling at us. And I could tell that Black Umbrella and Wadoshai Shryak aren't in a total agreement with this guy belittling us. But Joe Morgan belittled us, yelling at us, who do you think you are? This isn't a charity. You don't use the organization to make money. And all the time in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, what's the organization for then if we're not about money? And from that day forward, I disliked Joe Morgan. I despised the man. I despised him. Like, I thought he was arrogant, that he put himself in this position of Godfather, and nobody ever called him Godfather. That was just not the case. If he would have referred to himself that way, he would have got whacked. I mean, he was a well-respected member. Like many other cardenales were well-respected, but I did not like him. I did not feel like he was my brother. There were people that...
He wasn't even Mexican.
He wasn't even Mexican. But that wasn't it, because Raymond Shryak is Native American, and I think he's Polish. Polish and Native American. But he's Caucasian and Native American. He's not even Mexican. My sponsor, Corwin Elmore, Sloppy from Clanton, he was a Mohawk Indian. Vessi Sagato was Samoan. I mean, this is an eclectic mix of ethnicities. So when you hear Mexican Mafia, it's kind of like a misnomer, right? There's people from every walk of life in the organization. But I don't believe that there's ever been an African American in the Mexican Mafia. But every other, including Japanese, Capo Mike. There were a lot of guys that had other than Mexican heritage that were the gay membership. But I remember from that day, I disliked Joe Morgan. I thought that he belittled us for no reason when we were trying to do something good. I mean, it wasn't for self-interest that we were doing. It was for the good of everybody. But we didn't get a chance to explain that. And then I just never felt close to him after that. I never felt close to him. I never tried to get close to him because everybody was bootlicking that guy, you know? Everybody wanted to be Joe's friend. And I think maybe that put a sense of that Godfather role in everybody else's mind, but it was never in my mind.
Is the Mexican Mafia bigger in prison or bigger on the streets?
It's not big at all. People think that it's this monolithic organization, right? That's huge, you know. It's only about 140 guys in the entire United States.
Really?
Really. You know, you got about 70 in the state, and you got about 60 in the feds, and that's a liberal estimate, right? I'm going to be liberal. Say 150 just to be safe, right? But in reality, the Mexican Mafia, 99.9% of it is incarcerated in supermax prisons serving life sentences.
Really?
Really.
Law enforcement's doing a good job.
Doing a great job. Doing a great job. The Mexican Mafia is in your communities in street gangs. That's the infrastructure of the organization. If you think of this in terms of neurology, that's the cerebral cortex, the organization, right? And the exoskeletal structure and nervous system are the street gangs. The cerebral cortex couldn't function without the exoskeletal structure and the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system that the gangs provide. So the real power is the street gangs. I've always said that. Without Sureños, Southsiders, and street gangs, the Hispanic gang community, the Mexican Mafia doesn't exist. It truly doesn't. I've always thought that at some point, somebody would say, we're not going to do this for a bunch of dope fiends up in prison. Why are we paying them money? There's only about 150 of them. And there's 150,000 of us. We have the guns, the money, and the dope. And I'm not trying to plant a seed or anything. That's just a reality. That the Hispanic street gangs are far stronger than the Mexican Mafia. The Mexican Mafia controls its locus of power, prisons and jails, right? Street gangs control the community. The power's not in there, it's here. It's here in the streets, right? Whatever community. Houston, Texas, Southwest United States, California, Washington, Oregon. Because if you also think about this like oncology, right? Think about the organization as a gross metastasis, right? It's this malignancy. It's a tumor. And it's metastasized throughout the United States now. With federal indictments, Mexican Mafia members are spread throughout the United States. With gang members immigrating to different countries. You have Sureño gangs everywhere. Everywhere. New York, Washington, Virginia, Oregon, you name it, they're there. And the Mexican Mafia is following these gangs and getting a toehold into these communities. But again, without these gangs carrying out the edicts and desires of the organization, the Mexican Mafia doesn't exist. To controlling a prison yard.
What's the relationship like with the Mexican Mafia and the cartels?
It's healthy. But there's a common principle that the cartels don't push cartel politics in California, and mobsters don't push mafia politics in Mexico. There's been a number of Mexican Mafia members that have been executed in Mexico as a result of their participation with the cartels over there. A number of Mexican Mafia members. And those relationships flourish today. Mexican Mafia members receive vast amounts of dope. They provide specific services for plazas there and work with specific cartels, a number of cartels. But this has been going on for a long time, since the early 60s when Alejandro Lechuga established ties to the Juarez cartel. And then Joe Morgan had ties with the Araujo brothers in Tijuana, the then Tijuana cartel. And then one of the recent passes, Bat Marquez and Popeye Barron with the Adriano Felix cartel. I have graphics of Mexican Mafia members with cartel members currently in the BOP. So every time they indict, the United States indicts a cartel member and brings him to the United States, where does he go? He goes to prison. And who's in prison? The Mexican Mafia. Who controls that prison? The Mexican Mafia. So who controls these guys? The Mexican Mafia. But I think it's a symbiotic relationship. I think if you look at it from just a business perspective, rather than going and saying, give me $100,000 or we're going to whack you, or pay me $10,000 a month or we're going to whack you, I would approach it this way, like, let us do business with you. Allow us to enforce for you. We'll afford you market exclusivity. You want California, you got California. Every gang territory there is yours. Anybody messes with you, all you guys in prison, all of you guys are going to have a voice in what happens to you during your stay in prison. If collections are needed, we'll collect. If enforcement is needed, we'll whack people for you. I mean, that's a savvy move. And for a $4 billion a year industry, these guys are sitting on billions of dollars, right? That's a pittance. It's like insurance, like, oh yeah. In fact, the cartels look down on gang members. They look down on some Mexican Mafia members. They call them pelones, the bald-headed ones, right? And they call them plásticos. They're plastic because they're not born in Mexico, right? But they are useful to the organization, to the cartels themselves. I mean, look at, that's a huge organization. And it's a powerful organization. The Mexican Mafia is powerful in some respects, right? But it's not that big. It can grow exponentially, but it will never happen. There's always been this exclusivity and elitism in the organization. It's always been small, so it's always going to remain small. And then there's a high rate of attrition in the organization. You know, very few people die natural deaths in the mob. It's just the nature of the beast. You know, and I don't mean to be glib about it, but it's just, people get whacked. People drop out. People take the alternative path like I took, right? And there's just not a lot of longevity in the organization. For those very few that make it to the end of their respective rainbows as full-fledged members, well, hats off to them. You know, if that's your goal in life, then knock yourself out, bro. But that's not my goal in life.
Tell me what caused you to become an informant.
I never aspired to be an informant. I never wanted to be. In fact, I remember the first time I sat down to debrief, they started asking me questions, and I just welled up in tears, right? It was just like, here I am, I'm a rat. I'm a rat. I'm violating everything I was ever raised to. I'm violating that. I'm violating that rule. And I never anticipated testifying in court. But the very nature of divesting yourself from membership is a debrief process, right? Where you have to, I think that's been abolished now in the Department of Corrections, debriefing, particularly as a means of getting out of the shoe. And I didn't do it to get out of the shoe. That's one of the misconceptions. I did it to get out of the shoe. The shoe broke me. That didn't break me. The politics broke me. I just got tired. And I was afraid. Quite frankly, I was afraid. I'm not ashamed to say that now. Before I was like, no, I wasn't afraid. I was scared to death. My God, every day, I was having anxiety attacks, and I didn't even know what they were. But I was afraid. I think that's the harsh reality of it. I lost my edge. I didn't have it anymore, and I was okay with leaving. After a while, at first it broke me though. Psychologically, emotionally, I was a wreck.
What kind of things go through your head?
First thing, I wanted to go back. Like, no, I can win this battle. I want to put me back. I don't want to be a rat. I don't want to be a PC. This is too late. We already moved your stuff. So they have you go through this debriefing process, right? You divulge everything, everybody. You vomit it out, boom, right? And they fact check. It takes about 2 years to do your debrief, right? And I was debriefing for FBI, sheriffs, LAPD, and the CDC at the same time. And then they sent a Learjet and they flew me out. They flew me out to an undisclosed location. And they housed me for about 13 months, not in the CDC. And it was there that they told me, you could change lives. You could save lives. If you could just reach one person and change that life, that it's all worthwhile. And at first it was all about me. I was special. I had that narcissistic streak. Oh man, I'm getting special treatment. I'm getting privileges and, something beyond what prison was, right? But it was all about my own narcissism at first. I wanted to retain. I was a special guy in the mob with all this superpower. But it's gone now, so I got to get this special super supply somewhere, So it was this informant thing, right? And I didn't like it. I despised it. I despised the word informant, right? But I'm okay with it. I was a paid informant.
People, like in the comments, you'll see a million.
Oh, yeah, rat. Yeah.
Sammy the Bull gets the same thing.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
But I don't think when you're faced with the options that you're given,
oh yeah,
I would love to see somebody else say,
it's an easy choice.
I'm not going to be a rat.
Yeah, it's an easy choice.
Good luck with that.
I think when anybody's faced with their own mortality and really the options that you have at the end of that one perspective rainbow, I'm loath to call it a rainbow because it's not a rainbow, The options are very dismal.
And the shoe is one of the most depressing places on earth.
It is, but it's actually, if you adapt, you acclimate really quickly, right? You get your routine, you work out, you study in college, you read books, you do your crossword puzzles and write letters, and it's a very mundane existence, but some people thrive there. But I never anticipated being this informant. I talked to some guys and some meaningful people that became meaningful in my life. Asked me to do some videos for kids, right? And I did it, and then I did the book, and then we started receiving feedback. We did the Black Hand, Chris Blatchford and I, and we started receiving feedback. Like, man, this book changed my life. I changed the course of my life because of this book, and I saw your video on YouTube, and I've never put a video up on YouTube. All those videos out there are leaked video from opportunistic individuals who just jumped on it, right? And God bless them. God bless them. I'm not resentful behind that at all. I've recently put a video out, and it was just to test the waters, and I don't think that's really my realm. That's
Not if you can't show your face.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm not going to show my face. My appearance is significantly different. Tattoos are gone. So, why would I put my face out there? Why would I do that? I don't think there's any amount of money in the world, unless it's life-altering money, that I would do it.
Well, it could be a book deal, it could be a movie, it could be anything.
Could be. I mean, if it's significant, yeah, then I'm off to Europe. I'm off to Europe. But these individuals had an impact in my life. They're good men, and I began to realize they weren't my enemy. Cops, I'm talking about prosecutors and DA investigators and corrections officials, and some of them became truly significant friends, and are still my friends today. When I'm in town, we'll go to dinner, or if they're out my way, we go out, have a good time. I see them at the training seminars and in court when I'm brought in for court. And they've had an impact. And I think that from each one, I've taken a bit of their tile, like a mosaic, right? Taken a bit from each one, like life lessons. And they contributed to creating the man that I am today. So it's truly significant to say that they are responsible for the man I become, as well as other significant people in my life. And I don't feel the repugnance of that word anymore, informant or witness or rat. I mean, I am a paid expert witness. That's what I do. I work at the request of the government on any given case at any given time. I have no skin in the matter. I have no dog in the fight. But there's a caveat that they disclose all the information that I glean from what they have me evaluate to the prosecution, just as the prosecution does it to the defense. That's it. I'm not going to lie for anybody, not for any amount of money. I finally regained my humanity and my integrity, and I'm not going to impugn that for anybody. I'm not. There's no money that's going to say, hey, lie for me. I'm not going to do that.
You've transformed yourself.
I think that God had a lot to do with it. There's purposes that you go through things. I think that everything has a purpose in your life, right? And I think the Lord had a lot to do with that. I'm not a church attending Christian. We go to church once in a while. But again, my religion is my religion. I'm not knocking anybody that gets on here and testifies about their ministry, but I'm just not going to do that. I think that some things are private, and that's private. But I am a believer. I am a true believer. I believe that the way I got out of prison was simply a miracle. After 5 grants and reversals, and then finally the courts rule on my behalf, and the governor lets me go on an en banc hearing. That's a miracle. I was the guy that was supposed to die in prison. I was the poster child for that guy should never see daylight. So I'm thankful.
How did they approach you with this offer?
It wasn't an offer. We filed a writ of habeas corpus in Los Angeles Superior Court and in front of a judge that hears all habeas corpuses from California prisoners for this district, who, I might add, had denied 2 of my writs in the past after I received parole grants. But after each denial and reversal from the governor, I'd look at the reversal and I'd start plugging those holes. I lack insight, so Governor Jerry Brown says, why did he go on to participate in such brutal violence? So I talked to my then wife at the time. I said, I'm going to tell him about the sexual abuse in my life, that was a causative factor in my seeking out acceptance of gangs and all that, right? And I knew it was going to hit the news. I knew it was going to hit the news, and I was like, man, I don't want to do this. I didn't even tell my family, So I set about doing that, and I addressed a lot of the therapy. I attended therapy, and I gained insight. I was able to articulate adequately to the boards that I realized my behavior was dysfunctional. I accepted responsibility for it. I showed remorse for my victims, and I had made significant gains in rehabilitation. So we finally, after the 5th denial, I contacted an organization known as the Prison Law Office, very powerful group up in San Francisco. They have the most wins against the governor in the state of California in litigation. And they agreed to represent me. And we established a formidable team. of individuals. Jacob Hutt was my attorney. He had never filed a writ before in his life. And he filed this writ with the assistance of Laura Shepard, who was my parole attorney at the time. And it was a humdinger. The judge granted every issue that we had put forth in the writ. And Jacob Hutt was this guy that just had never done a writ. And I remember one day they called me to the gang investigators. I had a good rapport at every prison I was at with the gang investigators, right? Obviously, I was protected in SNY and a PC yard, so they brought me in for a number of reasons, right? This was for a case. And I was there, and we're talking about this case. I made a phone call to a district attorney. I spoke to the district attorney. And then the investigator says, hey, you have an important phone call. They've approved it. You're going to get it right now. So they make the phone call, and I get on the phone. It's Jacob Hutt. He says, Rene. And I says, yes. He says, congratulations. You're going home. I'm sorry. It's still very emotional. It's like a miracle. I remember he said, Rene, congratulations, you're going home. And I had the same reaction. I said, no. He says, yeah, they asked for an extension. The judge granted your writ, but the governor's going to appeal it. And I said, oh, man. Okay. So during that process, I had another hearing scheduled for parole, and everybody said to postpone it, just wait for the outcome of the writ. They're going to grant it in your favor. And I said, no, let's go. Let's get that 6th win. Let's enhance it for the next writ in case we lose this writ, right? I'm on a legal battle now. And I go to the hearing, and it goes all sideways. I get a commissioner who's, quite frankly, not the kindest individual in the world. And I'll leave it at that. His name was Robert Barton, I believe his name was. Former prosecutor for Kern County District Attorney's Office. And he took me through the ringer, put me under investigation, stopped the hearing, and I thought, oh my God, 12 years of work down the drain because I elected to go to this hearing. Well, I passed. I participated in the investigation. No wrongdoing found. Strong opposition from the victims' families, which I understand completely. And, we prevailed. And during that time, while waiting 6 months for the investigation to be resolved and going to the hearing, they grant my parole. The same Commissioner Barton grants my parole after berating me again in the second hearing. So I'm mystified. Like, why did he do that? Why did he put me through that, And during that process, they usually wait 120 days, 150 days actually. The BPH, the Board of Prison Hearings, has 120 days to evaluate your finding of suitability for parole. Then it's kicked over to the gubernatorial review panel. And the governor has 30 days after the 120 days to make a determination, to modify the finding, to take no action, to send it en banc or reverse. He has 4 actions, and only one takes your parole away, and that's reversal. He's done reversal every time. So I'm waiting for that. Every year I had gotten parole, they'd call me up, and the warden would come in and give me the reversal letter, say, hey, bad luck, Rene. The governor reverses, said, keep doing what you're doing a great job. And it got to the point where I despised being called to the captain's office, especially around that time when I'm waiting for the parole decision, because it's going to be bad news. It's going to be a reversal. So I steal my then wife. Expect a reversal. We're getting reversed. We've got to go to court. We're going to win it in court. We're not going to win it here. And I'm waiting. It's about the 140th day. And it's count time. I'm at Ironwood State Prison, and the door rack's open. Pow! And lieutenant's walking forward with the letter. I see it. I see the governor's seal on it. I said, motherfucker, another reversal. And he hands it to me. He says, congratulations. And I said, it's a reversal? He says, yeah. I said, yeah, that's what I expected. And I look at it, and it says en banc hearing. Because of the complex legal issues and the historic past of grants, and that the governor's going to send it to an en banc hearing. And I knew right then, I said, oh my God, I'm going home. So I go to the en banc hearing. 13 commissioners had granted my parole in the past. So many of those people are still sitting in that panel that granted my parole in the past. I knew it was a lock. And then they granted it. And it was a 30-day process, and I was waiting. I was like, it was surreal. It's still surreal that I'm sitting here. Like I told you, I was the poster child for dying in prison. You know, I was the guy that was supposed to die in prison. And, you know, I think that was a miracle from the Lord. All those stars and planets aligning and everything that occurred and the people that came in support, I think it was all divine. It wasn't just because I was an articulate guy and I plugged all the holes and I rehabilitated myself. No, I refuse to believe that. I can't believe it.
Tell me what witness protection is like.
Stringent, but what's the alternative, right? I'm okay with it.
You've relocated.
I've relocated. I've started a new life, and I'm happy. You know, in recovery they teach you about triggers, right? They teach you about triggers, like external triggers, internal triggers, things that might set you off towards anger, towards relapse, towards this 12-step program for everything, right? Which I think is, I'm not really a buyer, right? I'm not a buyer. When I stopped, I just stopped like this. Like, this is it, I'm done. You know, it's been 18 years. And I've never been happier in my life.
You've never been happier?
No, I'm happy now.
That's
but
great.
I've never been happier in my life, right?
That's great.
Sobriety brings clarity. Simply that. But they teach you about these triggers. Well, I was reading. I'm a voracious reader. And I read about glimmers. It's the opposite of a trigger, right? Things that bring you joy and peace and tranquility, right? And where I live, it's kind of rustic, right? Trees. I went down the street with a bunch of trees. It was in the fall. And I was driving. I was going to get something to eat. And all of a sudden, a gust of wind came, and all these autumn leaves were falling. It was picturesque, like something you see in a romance novel, right? It just put a lump in my throat. Because you don't see that in prison. And I stopped and I said, this is a glimmer. This is a glimmer. And you don't get more peaceful than that. Every day I look for a glimmer. And I find it in the smallest thing. You know, I got some dogs. I got a Cane Corso and a Belgian Malinois. Beautiful animals. And every day they provide glimmers to me, right? They love me unconditionally. I like dogs more than people. They're loyal unconditionally. They'll die for you, you know, and that's my peace, right? Just little things, antiquing. I go antiquing. Who would figure an ex-mob guy loves antiquing, right? I love going to yard sales and junk yards and junk shops and just finding the little treasure, right? Oh man, that's cool. I know what that is. You know, I'm gonna do that. Sure enough, I'm doing it. And it's the simplicity. I think the simplicity. And I used to think that gangster was being a gangster. That was gangster, right? But I found that real gangsters, those are the guys that get up and work at 5 a.m. and work 2 jobs to put food on their table and pay for their kids' clothes. You know, that's gangster. Living a normal life and respecting other people's rights. That's gangster. You know, that's real because it's hard. It's hard to pay bills. It's hard to live. but it's freedom, you know, and I won't relinquish it for anything. I'm never going back, you know. And if I die tomorrow, I'm okay with that. I'm okay. Say they find me in suburbia somewhere, or my little urban spot, right? And somebody comes and puts a pill in me, right? And it's over. News, Rene Enriquez murdered, right? I'm okay with that. I'm free. I lived life. I got to breathe free air. And I'm happy for what I did. I have no remorse for what I've done. I don't feel bad for the guys that went to prison. I mean, they committed the crimes. They put themselves in prison. I didn't put them in prison. I just interpreted their communications. But, you know, I'm happy. I have a legit source of income. I work for the government at times. And I'm okay with that. You know, I'm happy with the transition that my life has taken. I'm happy with my decisions. Am I concerned? Not overly so. I'm cognizant that there's a threat, you know, and I understand that will always be. And I accept that. But I'm happy with what I did. I'm a happy man today.
All right. Rene, thank you so much for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
Fascinating.
I think it was pretty powerful.
Thank you.
I'm in the middle of the mountains, that river running wild. I'm as peaceful as a shadow and carefree as a child. The sunlight singing to me a soft and gentle song, singing soak it all in, darling, for you're right where you belong. Right where you belong. Right where you belong. Oh, you've been down in that valley, but came back before too long. Right where you belong. You've been to hell and back again. Nobody knows your story, at least not the full one, 'cause you've learned you can't trust just anyone. Life has dealt some heavy blows, some have made you strong, but you shouldn't have to work so hard to find where you belong. Find where you belong. Find where you belong. Oh, you've been down in that valley, you've been down far too long. Let's find where you belong. Maybe a state of mind. It may be the furthest thing from what you think you'll find. But listen to that voice inside, it won't guide you wrong. Trust in time, my friend, you'll wind up right where you belong. Right where you belong. Right where you belong. There will still be valleys, but you won't stay too long. For there's a place your heart can heal. There's a place where you can feel you're right where you belong.
Even though Soft White Underbelly consists of a lot of videos, it's really still a photography project to me. And if you appreciate the photography, sometimes it's difficult to enjoy it when it's scrolling down the screen, which is the only option I had in this horizontal format on YouTube. So last year we came out with the first Soft White Underbelly book, which is a collection of the best portraits from the thousands of interviews I've done. Each portrait in this book is accompanied by an interesting quote from the person's interview.
Oh my God.
There's more.
Wow. These aren't as bad as I thought. I look like a witch.
The book includes multi-page spreads of both Rebecca and the Whitaker family. I will not be reprinting this book when it sells out, so once it's gone for good. You can order yours at softwhiteunderbelly.org. $125, $150 for a signed copy. And thank you for watching.